We want to move to the new craze, Rania.
What's that?
Cryptocurrency, which is getting bigger and bigger here in the United States, and Donald Trump is very much in the middle of that. I believe Trump Media actually has just released some new crypto thing today. But nonetheless, to help us sort through all of this, we are very, very honored to be joined here on the show by Doug Henwood, the economic journalist, broadcaster, and host of the weekly radio show and podcast Behind the News. Doug, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. Quote unquote crypto. I don't know exactly which one it is, but I think it was Bitcoin over $105,000 today in terms of value. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, saying that it's all good. Crypto's all good. Banks can deal with it. There's some risks, but we just need a good regulatory infrastructure. But I have to say, Doug, there's a whole feel to this cryptocurrency thing to me that has kind of an Enron feel to it. Like this is not like the next innovation in finance, but potentially a pretty dangerous bubble. But I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Your thoughts?
Well, I would say that when people who are not, familiar with this field have that kind of instinct, you should not lose hold of that instinct. I mean, people get a little knowledge and they say, "Oh, I'm so sophisticated now. I really understand everything." But sometimes that first impulse is correct. And this is, I notice here, your Chiron here. Is it a scam? Yes, it is a scam. And it's funny. Trump thought that a little while back, but he changed his mind very dramatically for two apparent reasons. One is that somebody made an NFT of him, and he thought that was really exciting and kind of fell in love with it because it's about him. But then second, there's a possibility of money and votes. And all the crypto mavens have showered him with money and attention and flattered him. He's very susceptible to flattery. And so now he's just loading up his administration with crypto heads. It's scary. I think it could go. I should just look back at the history of finance. Most forms of fictitious capital, as Marx called them, stocks, bonds, or whatever, do have some kind of underlying value. A bond has a stream of interest payments. A stock has a stream of corporate profits and dividends. This is absolutely valueless. There's just no anchor to it at all. I think it's a real innovation in the history of finance in that sense. It's just completely fictitious, invented money. One day, this guy, Satoshi Yamamoto, published a paper and declared that Bitcoin was in existence and endowed it with value, just like God in Genesis. It's a remarkable turn of events. But President, now it has the full power of the U.S. state behind it.
And I'm curious, Doug, if you can elaborate a bit on the danger of that, right? Because the argument goes, if you increase U.S. involvement in crypto, it actually will legitimize a sector that's built on extreme volatility, in many cases fraud, money laundering, rather than actually curbing its risks. So I guess, how do you see this push by Trump to make the U.S., the crypto capital of the planet, playing out in terms of that danger and that it brings us towards for financial instability?
Well, it's funny. I mentioned earlier that Jerome Powell said we need a good regulatory structure. We're not going to have one of those under Trump. We're not going to have any kind of regulatory structure. So we can forget about that. It's going to be Elon Musk in charge, turning up everything to 11. And then, he's got David Sachs, who was a partner of one of the PayPal guys, too. It's funny, these two guys are both products of apartheid South Africa, which I think is not an irrelevant fact. But moving on, I think the big danger is that no one really knows these markets, who's behind them, who owns the stuff, who is like barred up to the hilt to buy it. We just don't know. And so when you have that kind of murkiness in the financial structure, you just don't know if it blows up, if it loses value, and it could lose. The history of crypto is that it can lose 20% of its value almost instantly. You just don't know who's going to get exposed. That famous comment from Warren Buffett many years ago, that when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming without trunks. I think that crypto has that risk at a very, very large scale. We just don't know. Most of the evidence is that these markets are very concentrated in a few hands and very manipulable. That seems very, very dangerous, especially Trump is talking about creating some kind of sovereign wealth fund based on crypto or something. It's completely insane, but we're just all going whole hog into this insane world.
No, a good point about South Africa. Peter Thiel, I also just recently learned, apparently from South Africa, also part of the PayPal mafia.
He spent some time there as a kid. He's, I think, originally German and passed through South Africa. But I think, they all bear that stamp. These people.
No, they really do.
But it's also, it's the mining and the interest in gold too. It's this weird, obsession with these different forms of money. They all think that state money is bad. They're good libertarians. They want to get around the state, so they hope that crypto can help them get around the state. But it's also a way for these people to avoid taxes, to avoid any kind of scrutiny. And we just, we really just don't know who owns this stuff or where it's going or what could happen. The thing is just rife with fraud over the years. People have do these what they call rug pulls, where they think you're going to get some money and it turns out you don't get any, and it just all disappears. And we could be seeing that in an extremely large scale. We just don't know, and there's no way that they're going to allow the Federal Reserve to for all the problems of the Federal Reserve, it really is a very class-bound institution, but it is one of the few remaining institutions in this country that is actually competent at what it does. Everything else seems to be falling apart. The Federal Reserve is still more or less competent at what it does, which is why I think that Musk and Sachs et al. Just want to keep the Fed's nose out of this stuff. It's going to be interesting to watch Trump fighting with Jay Powell in the coming months too. It's going to be, we all remember the first Trump administration, which was just one adventure after another. The second Trump administration seems to be even more bizarre and more fast-paced and just more surreal.
This is a little off topic, but since we mentioned Elon Musk a couple of times, one of the things I'm curious about, given the what you make of this, his influence with Trump, is this obsessive, constant mentioning by Elon Musk of Milton Friedman and the importance of Milton Friedman, how we have to keep following Milton Friedman, and so on and so forth. I'm wondering what you make of that in terms of what potential impact it could have, since we know that Elon Musk has the ear of Trump.
Well, I think what these people mean, Milton Friedman, they mean let capitalists do whatever they want to, with no scrutiny, with no regulation by government, no taxes, just let us do our thing and keep our money and shut up. That's basically what he means by Milton Friedman. I really doubt that Elon Musk has read much Milton Friedman. A lot of people who criticize Milton Friedman haven't read much of him either. But I almost feel bad for him because he was, right wing, but a serious person. And he is being, adopted by all these maniacs like Musk in his writings. But it basically just means let us do whatever we want to and, screw everything else.
Sorry, to go back to the idea of crypto, it just seems like this kind of end stage capitalism situation where you're actually looking to fake money.
Right?
End stage, look, end stage can be very bad.
Yes, and it can go on a long time.
I'm not trying. It's like I don't say that like in an optimistic way of like, yay, capitalism's ending. I'm just saying it's like gone to this doomed point where now it's like money's already fake. We give it value, right? But like to have this money you can't even see or hold, or like, and have it be this weird thing that makes no sense to most people is just so wild. But there's this other aspect of crypto where it's like to have it exist and to mine it requires like all this like energy, like a really crazy amount of energy where it actually like hurts the environment, which is not something I knew that much about. But like there's so many downsides to this, to the point where like it's actually causing pollution that also doesn't even get talked about. Like it's just completely doomed culture, Doug, doomed culture. But I'm just curious if you can speak to that.
I completely agree with you there. The classic definition of money, it's got three parts. It's a unit of exchange, means you could buy and sell stuff with it. A unit of account, which means that people keep their books in it. Businesses and households keep their books in it. And a store of value. Okay, it fails utterly on the first two counts. As a store of value, you don't want to keep your funds in something that moves, unless you're speculating. But if you have savings or something, you don't want to keep it in an asset that can fluctuate 20% in a day. So it fails as anything like a classic definition of money. And then you're right, the ecological consequences of this are just insane. It takes an enormous amount of energy to mine these things. It's funny how they use mine as if it were a precious metal. But on top of that, there's a very strong overlap between people who love crypto and who love AI, another completely frightening technological innovation that also requires immense amounts of energy, and they're a real threat to the climate. And Trump is talking about declaring some kind of national energy emergency just to fund the expansion of power generation with what he called it the other day, clean, beautiful coal, which is just psychotic. So it's just, it is a completely phantasmic form of money. But then that requires, people think it's immaterial, but it requires this enormous material infrastructure of servers and electricity and transmissions mechanisms. So it is in essence extremely material and very damaging in its material dimensions. But it does give rise to this consciousness of immateriality, which is also, I think, very damaging, very alienating, and bizarre. So it really does feel surreal, like a drug experience, but not a very pleasant one.
Mm, mm. Well, and it reminds, in a way, like there's, to use the phrase maybe kind of loosely, it seems like it has such an antisocial character. I mean, it makes me reflect a little bit on the role of the crypto industry in the election, where, they were in this sort of unholy alliance with the Zionist lobby targeting members of the Squad, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, people who had actually never really said that much about crypto. So it seemed relatively obvious to me that to them, it was as much about people who potentially could be against them as opposed to people who had some sort of anti-crypto front in Congress, which in and of itself seems to speak to sort of the nefariousness of it.
Oh yeah, I agree with the political affiliations of most crypto enthusiasts are pretty dark. They're very reactionary, very much in alliance with Hayek. You mentioned Friedman, but I think there's something more Hayekian about it in this belief, this attempt to wall off the economic realm from any kind of political influence. And Hayek himself believed that there should be competition in monies. So you could always have the hardest money, which means austere, deflationary kinds of influences. So that is a lot of the underlying political logic. It's also deeply libertarian, individualistic, and as you say, antisocial. Marx said a man carries his bond with society in his pocket. Money is really fundamentally a very social thing. It may feel, very detached and abstract, but at its base, it is a social thing. It's like it represents people who are hooked together by market relations, whole networks of production and distribution that money ties into. Crypto doesn't even engage in any meaningful way with that things on that kind of social level. It is just this weird asset that people fetishize. It's just pure fetish value with nothing at all, no other dimension to it than that. I think there are a lot of people who want to use it to escape taxes. There are people who want to do it to hire hitmen or buy drugs or any kinds of other things. But it's just the broad phenomenon of crypto just seems deeply antisocial. A lot of people have said it's a solution to something that isn't really a problem. And the only problem it's really a solution of is how can I move large amounts of money secretly so governments can't track me? And I think that really is an important part of its charm. But then the rest of it's just this real pure ideological value of people, and the gee whiz, oh, isn't tech cool kind of thing that all these tech nerds around Trump love too. And you also look at the people around it. People around Trump now are constituting a new kind of subset of the ruling class, a new elite, these tech bros driven, extremely rich, with extremely reactionary politics, with basically substantial state power right now. And I find it very frightening and antisocial. And the climate, the damage to the climate that this produces is not really that much separate from everything else. That too is antisocial. The whole enterprise is deeply antisocial.
Mm. Well, it's been an honor to have you with us here, Doug Henwood. Hopefully everyone is checking out Behind the News on a weekly basis. Thank you again for giving us some of your time here in the Freedom Side.
Oh, anytime. Happy to do it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.